Lana had always loved mysteries. As a young archaeologist, she spent her days digging through ancient ruins, hoping to uncover secrets hidden for centuries. But today, the mystery she faced wasn't ancient. It was brand new and far more terrifying. The strange spacecraft appeared out of nowhere, landing in a remote part of the desert with no warning, no sound, and no explanation. The scientists in her lab were baffled. No one knew where it came from or what it wanted. Lana's curiosity got the best of her, as usual. Ignoring the warnings, she decided to drive out to the desert alone to take a closer look. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, her mind racing with excitement and fear. As she parked her car a safe distance from the craft, she saw the massive silver ship looming in the distance. It was sleek and shiny, with strange symbols carved along the sides. There were no windows, no doors, just a solid wall of metal. She felt a chill run down her spine. "This isn't just a regular spacecraft," she whispered to herself. She pulled out her camera, snapping photos as she moved closer, her feet sinking into the sand with each step. Her heart pounded as she approached the ship. Suddenly, a soft humming sound filled the air. She stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground. And then, without warning, a doorway opened in the side of the ship. A ramp lowered, and Lana held her breath as strange figures emerged from the darkness. They were tall, with shimmering silver suits that clung to their lean bodies. Their faces were hidden beneath helmets, but Lana could see their glowing blue eyes through the visors. She took a step back, realizing she might have gotten herself into more than she'd bargained for. One of the figures pointed directly at her, and before she could react, two of them moved toward her with lightning speed. Lana tried to turn and run, but they were faster than she could have imagined. In seconds, they grabbed her arms, lifting her off the ground. She kicked and struggled, but their grip was like iron. Her heart pounded as they dragged her up the ramp and into the ship. "Let me go," she shouted, but they didn't respond. Instead, they led her down a long, dark corridor, lit only by faint blue lights on the walls. She felt her stomach twist with fear as she realized she was completely trapped. No one knew she was here. No one would come looking for her. They brought her to a small room and gently, yet firmly, set her down on a metal chair. The walls of the room were covered in strange markings that pulsed with an eerie light. Lana took deep breaths, trying to calm herself. "Okay, Lana," she whispered. "Stay calm. Think." One of the figures stepped forward, raising a small device that emitted a soft, buzzing sound. He held it over her head, and suddenly, Lana felt an odd tingling sensation. It was as if the device was scanning her, reading every cell in her body. She bit her lip, feeling both fascinated and horrified. After a few minutes, the figure stepped back, and she heard a voice, calm and cold, echo in her mind. "You are one of the chosen." Lana blinked, looking around. No one's mouth had moved, but the words were clear in her head. "Chosen. Chosen for what?" she demanded, her voice shaky. The figure tilted its head, as if studying her. "The Emperor has selected you. You will serve him." "Serve him," Lana repeated, her voice rising. "I don't even know who you are, and I definitely don't want to serve anyone." The figures ignored her protest. They lifted her from the chair and guided her through another series of hallways. She tried to struggle, but their grip was too strong. Finally, they'd brought her to a large room with a massive window. Lana's jaw dropped as she looked outside. Stars filled the sky, brighter and closer than she'd ever seen. Earth was a tiny blue dot far below. "Oh no," she whispered, realizing just how far from home she truly was. One of the figures stepped forward. "You are now in the Andromeda galaxy. The Emperor awaits you." Lana's heart sank as she realized this wasn't just an alien abduction. She was on her way to meet someone, or something, that ruled a distant galaxy. And whatever they wanted from her, she had no choice in the matter. She was trapped, far from home, at the mercy of these powerful strangers. As the ship continued its journey, Lana stared out at the endless stars, wondering what fate awaited her. All she knew was that she would need every ounce of courage and cleverness to survive. Arrival at the alien palace. Lana's heart raced as the alien spaceship descended onto a massive platform in the middle of what looked like a shimmering, futuristic city. From the window, she could see towering buildings made of glass and metal that seemed to stretch into the sky. Strange lights glowed from the city, casting an eerie green-blue glow over everything. She felt like she had stepped into a dream, or a nightmare. As the spaceship doors opened, Lana was escorted out by 2 guards. The warm air smelled unfamiliar, almost metallic, and Lana felt a pang of fear as she looked around. She realized just how far from Earth she truly was. Everywhere she looked, she saw beings of different shapes and sizes, some with scales, others with feathers, some tall and thin, others short and muscular. This was clearly a place where creatures from across the universe had gathered. The guards led her down a wide path lined with strange, alien plants that glowed softly in the dim light. She couldn't help but stare. The plants had translucent leaves, and some even seemed to be moving, as though they were alive and aware. The air was filled with a faint hum, like distant music, and Lana felt both amazed and terrified by this bizarre, otherworldly beauty. Finally, they reached a pair of enormous doors, towering high above her, and covered in strange carvings. The guards stopped, and with a low rumbling sound, the doors began to open on their own. Lana took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she stepped forward, wondering what lay ahead. Inside was the grandest palace she had ever seen. The floor was made of some kind of crystal that sparkled under her feet, reflecting light in every direction. Massive columns rose to the ceiling, each one carved with intricate symbols and images. Alien creatures, dressed in fine robes and strange jewelry, walked around the palace, their heads turning to look at Lana as she passed. She felt their stares but kept her chin up, trying to appear braver than she felt. Her eyes were drawn to a grand staircase leading up to a raised platform. On top of the platform sat a tall throne made of dark metal, shaped almost like wings folding around it. Sitting on the throne was a figure who radiated power and authority. She knew immediately that this had to be the Emperor. The guards pushed her forward, and Lana found herself standing in the center of the room, surrounded by curious onlookers. She took a deep breath, willing herself not to show fear. The Emperor was watching her with a cold, calculating gaze. His eyes, an intense shade of blue, seemed to pierce right through her. She could tell he was assessing her, studying her like she was some rare and exotic animal. After a long silence, the Emperor finally spoke. His voice was deep and calm, yet there was a chill to it that made Lana's skin crawl. "Welcome, Earthling," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "You have been chosen to join my collection, a place in the Andromeda Galaxy's most exclusive harem. Consider it an honor." Lana felt a surge of anger rise within her. "I didn't ask for this. I don't even know who you are, or why you want me here." The room fell silent, and a few aliens gasped at her boldness. The Emperor raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk on his face. "You will learn, Earthling, that resistance is pointless. I am Xarxes, ruler of Andromeda. I command this galaxy, and no one dares to question me." Lana clenched her fists but held her tongue. She realized that defiance would get her nowhere. At least not yet. She decided to play along, hoping to understand more about her new prison and the man who ruled it. A tall, slender woman with green skin stepped forward. "I am Zarela," she said in a gentle voice. "I will be your guide in this palace. Come with me." Lana hesitated, but when she looked back at Emperor Xarxes, his cold gaze left her no choice. She followed Zarela through a series of long, winding corridors. Everywhere she looked, she saw luxury beyond anything she'd ever imagined. Golden statues, fountains with water that glowed, and rooms filled with beautiful fabrics and strange music. Yet, despite the beauty, Lana couldn't shake the feeling that she was in a cage, however gilded it was. Finally, Zarilla led her to a large room with a high domed ceiling covered in painted stars. "This will be your chamber," Zarilla said softly. The room was filled with fine furniture, a large bed, and a balcony that overlooked the palace gardens. But to Lana, it still felt like a prison. Zarilla seemed to sense her thoughts. "You are one of the Emperor's chosen," she said. "It is a great privilege. Many beings from across the galaxy would do anything for a place in his harem." "I don't want this privilege," Lana replied, her voice hard. "I just want to go home." Zarilla gave her a sad smile. "In this palace, Earthling, one does not always get what they want. The Emperor's will is absolute, but if you are wise, you will learn to survive." Left alone, Lana stood by the balcony, looking out at the alien landscape stretched before her. Strange trees with silver leaves swayed gently in the breeze, and distant towers glowed under a greenish sky. Despite the beauty, Lana felt trapped. She didn't know how, but she made a promise to herself in that moment. She would find a way to escape, no matter what it took. Challenges and rivalries. Lana quickly discovered that life in the Emperor's palace was far from simple. She had been in the palace only a few days when the challenges began. From dawn until late at night, she and the other women in the harem were expected to participate in strange, exhausting tests. Each test seemed designed to push them to their limits, both physically and mentally. Lana soon realized that the Emperor wasn't interested in keeping just anyone in his harem. He wanted the best, the smartest, and the strongest. Her first test was a puzzle, one like she had never seen before. She was led into a large room filled with tall, glass walls that twisted and turned in every direction. It was a maze, and at the center of the maze was a glowing blue orb. Lana had to reach the orb without touching the walls, which shimmered with a strange energy. She knew that one wrong move could mean failure, and failure in this palace came with consequences. Taking a deep breath, Lana began to navigate the maze. She focused on every step, careful to avoid brushing against the walls. Around her, she could see other women moving through their own mazes. Some were quicker than her, moving with the confidence of someone who had done this before. Others struggled, cursing as they stumbled into dead ends. One woman, tall and graceful with silvery skin, caught Lana's eye. She moved effortlessly through her maze, her expression calm and focused. Lana realized this woman was no stranger to the palace's challenges, but Lana wouldn't be intimidated. She took her time, staying focused until she finally reached the glowing orb at the center. When she finished, she noticed the silvery-skinned woman watching her, a hint of a smirk on her face. Lana lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. She had completed the challenge, and that was all that mattered. The next few days were filled with more challenges, each one harder than the last. There were physical tests that required them to climb walls, jump over barriers, and move through pools of water that shimmered with an eerie light. There were also mental challenges, including complicated memory games and riddles that seemed impossible to solve. Lana did her best, pushing herself harder with each test. She wasn't about to let anyone see her as weak. But the real challenge wasn't the tests, it was the other women. Lana quickly learned that some of them had been in the palace for years, carefully guarding their positions in the Emperor's harem. To them, Lana was an outsider, a newcomer who didn't belong. They didn't make it easy for her. One day, after a particularly grueling test, Lana was returning to her room when she overheard two women whispering behind her. "She thinks she's special just because she's from Earth," one of them sneered. "She won't last long." The Emperor always loses interest in the new ones. Lana pretended not to hear, but her heart tightened. She knew that many of the women saw her as competition, and they would do anything to make her fail. She had to stay strong, no matter what they thought of her. Later, during a training session, Lana was practicing with a strange, heavy staff when she felt a shove from behind. She stumbled, catching herself just before she fell. Turning around, she saw the silvery-skinned woman from the maze watching her with a cold smile. "You should be careful," the woman said, her voice smooth but mocking. Some of us don't like having to make room for outsiders. Lana took a deep breath, steadying herself. I'm not here to take anyone's place, but I won't be pushed around either. The woman laughed softly. We'll see about that. Despite the tension, Lana found that not everyone was her enemy. She made a few allies, including a quiet woman named Kara who had been in the palace for over a year. Kyra was friendly, always willing to give Lana tips on how to navigate the challenges. She warned Lana about the others, especially the silvery-skinned woman, whose name was Sira. Sira, Kyra explained, had been one of the Emperor's favorites for a long time, and saw anyone new as a threat. With Kyra's help, Lana grew stronger and faster, learning to anticipate the palace's brutal challenges. But she also kept her guard up around Sira, who seemed to watch her every move. She knew that Sira wanted her to fail, to give up, or to make a mistake that would cost her everything. But Lana was determined to prove herself, both to the Emperor and to herself. One evening, after another exhausting day of tests, Lana stood on her balcony, looking out at the stars. She felt a mix of frustration and hope. She missed Earth, missed the life she had left behind. But each challenge reminded her of her own strength, her own resilience. She hadn't chosen this life, but she would survive it. And one day, she would find a way to escape this palace, no matter how many obstacles stood in her way. For now, though, she had to focus on the tests, the rivalries, and the strange new world she had found herself in. She didn't know what the Emperor wanted from her, but she was determined to stay strong and outlast anyone who tried to stand in her way. A secret plan. Late one night, Lana lay awake in her chamber, staring up at the painted stars on the ceiling. She had been in the Emperor's palace for weeks now, surviving each test and avoiding Sira's constant attempts to make her fail. She could feel the weight of this place pressing down on her, a constant reminder that she was far from home. She wanted to escape, but the palace was a fortress, guarded by loyal soldiers and surrounded by strange technology she didn't understand. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, she heard a soft knock on her door. Startled, she sat up, her heart pounding. No one ever visited her at this hour. Slowly, she got out of bed and opened the door a crack. To her surprise, Kyra stood there, looking around nervously before slipping inside. Kyra, what are you doing here? Lana whispered, glancing toward the hallway. Kyra closed the door quietly and turned to face her, eyes wide and serious. Lana, I need to tell you something important, she said, but you have to promise you won't tell anyone. Lana nodded, her curiosity mixed with fear. I promise. What's going on? Kyra took a deep breath. There are people in the palace who want to bring down the Emperor. They're tired of his rule, tired of the way he treats us like objects. They've been planning a rebellion for months now, but they need help. Lana's eyes widened. A rebellion. She had sensed unrest in the palace, had noticed whispers and tense glances, but she never imagined that people would actually try to overthrow the Emperor. And you're involved in this? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Kyra nodded, her expression hard. I am. And I think you should join us. Lana's heart raced. This was her chance. She had been looking for a way out, a way to escape the Emperor's control. Joining the rebellion might be dangerous, but it could also be her only chance for freedom. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. Kyra looked relieved. We need someone who can sneak around the palace, someone the Emperor doesn't expect. You're new, so he isn't watching you as closely as he watches the others. If you help us gather information, it could give us the advantage we need to finally strike. Lana hesitated. The idea of sneaking around a palace filled with guards, risking her life for a plan that might fail, it was terrifying. But she thought of Earth, of the life she had lost, and she knew she had to try. I'll do it, she said firmly. Tell me what I need to know. Kyra smiled, her eyes shining with hope. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small device that looked like a silver bracelet. Wear this, she said. It's a communicator. If you press the blue gem on the side, you'll be able to speak to me and the others. Keep it hidden and only use it when you're alone." Lana slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, feeling the cool metal against her skin. It felt strange, knowing that she was now part of a secret rebellion. "When do we start?" Kira glanced toward the door, listening for any sounds in the hallway. "Tomorrow night, when the guards change shifts. That's when security is weakest. You'll need to go to the West Wing, near the Emperor's private chambers. There's a room there where he keeps important documents, records, plans, and information about his allies. We need you to find out as much as you can." Lana swallowed, feeling the weight of her new mission. "I'll do my best," she promised. With one last nod, Kyra slipped out of the room, leaving Lana alone in the darkness. She lay back down, her mind racing with thoughts of the rebellion. She felt a spark of hope, something she hadn't felt since her arrival in this strange, terrifying place. For the first time, she had a real chance to fight back. The next night, Lana prepared herself for her first mission. She waited until the guards changed shifts, slipping out of her room and moving quietly through the palace. Her heart pounded as she crept down dark hallways, the communicator bracelet warm against her wrist. Every sound, every shadow, felt like a threat, but she forced herself to stay calm. When she reached the West Wing, she found the room Kyra had mentioned, a small plain door hidden at the end of a long corridor. Taking a deep breath, Lana slipped inside and quickly scanned the room. Shelves lined the walls, filled with strange books and metal tablets covered in alien writing. In the center of the room was a large table with several open documents spread across it. Lana moved quickly, scanning the documents and memorizing what she could. She found lists of names, some marked as allies, others as enemies. There were maps, plans for expansion, and even mentions of new weapons the Emperor was developing. She knew this information would be crucial for the rebellion. Just as she was finishing, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through her. She pressed the blue gem on her bracelet, whispering, "Kyra, someone's coming. I need help." Kyra's voice came through, calm but urgent. "Stay hidden. Wait until they pass. Don't make a sound." Lana ducked behind a shelf, holding her breath as the footsteps drew closer. She could see a shadow under the door, the figure pausing just outside. She felt her heart hammering in her chest, each second stretching out as she prayed they wouldn't come in. Finally, the footsteps moved on, and the shadow disappeared. Lana let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling. She knew she couldn't stay much longer. Gathering her courage, she slipped out of the room and made her way back to her chamber, her mind buzzing with all she had seen. As she lay in bed that night, she felt a new determination. The rebellion had begun, and she was ready to fight. She would do whatever it took to bring down the Emperor and win her freedom. The Emperor's attention. The days passed quickly after Lana's first mission. She spent her time training and competing in challenges, but her mind was always on the rebellion. Each night, she met with Kyra and the other rebels to share information, strategize, and plan their next steps. They had learned so much about the Emperor's plans and his enemies. Each new piece of knowledge brought them closer to their goal, but it also increased the risk they faced. One evening, as Lana practiced her combat skills, she noticed a change in the atmosphere of the palace. Whispers echoed through the halls, and even the guards seemed on edge. It was as if everyone was waiting for something. When she returned to her chamber, she found Kyra waiting for her, looking more serious than usual. "What's going on?" Lana asked, sensing the tension. Kyra glanced around before speaking. "The Emperor has noticed you," she said quietly. "He's been asking questions about the newcomers in the harem, particularly about your skills and how you've been performing in the challenges." Lana's heart sank. What does he want with me? I'm just another girl in his collection. Kyra shook her head. You've made quite an impression. Your quick thinking in the maze and your ability to complete the tests have not gone unnoticed. The Emperor is curious about you, and curiosity can be dangerous. Lana felt a shiver run down her spine. What does he plan to do? I don't know, Kyra admitted, but he may want to bring you closer to him, which could put you in a vulnerable position. You need to be careful. That night, Lana tossed and turned in her bed, worry gnawing at her. She thought of the Emperor's cold, blue eyes, how they had studied her during the challenges. She didn't want his attention, but she also knew it could be an opportunity. If she could gain his trust, she might learn more about his plans and find a way to help the rebellion. But she had to tread carefully. The next day, during a gathering of the harem, the Emperor arrived unexpectedly. He walked into the room with an air of authority that silenced everyone. His presence filled the space, and all eyes turned to him, including Lana's. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, and her heart raced. "Ladies," he began, his voice smooth but commanding, "I have been watching you closely. You are here because you possess skills that can be valuable to me. I want to see who among you can truly stand out." Lana swallowed hard. Was this a test, or was he genuinely interested in her? She could sense Syra's jealousy in the corner of the room. The silvery-skinned woman's eyes were narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. The Emperor gestured for Lana to step forward. "You, Earthling," he said, his voice loud and clear. "You have impressed me with your performance. What do you say to a special challenge, just for you?" Lana's mind raced. This was her chance to prove herself, but it was also a trap. She could feel the eyes of the other women on her, the mix of envy and concern. "What kind of challenge?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The Emperor smiled, and Lana realized how dangerous that smile could be. "A contest of skills. If you win, you will earn a place by my side and be granted special privileges in the palace. If you lose, well, let's just say it could be unfortunate." Lana felt the weight of his words. It was a gamble, but she knew she had to accept. "I'll do it," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. "Excellent," the Emperor replied. "Prepare yourself. We will hold the contest tomorrow at dawn. Bring your best, and may the strongest prevail." As the Emperor left, Lana turned to Kira, who was watching her with wide eyes. "You can't be serious," Kyra whispered. "This is a trap. He wants to use you as an example." Lana shook her head, determination rising within her. "I know, but if I win, I can gather more information and keep my enemies closer. It's risky, but it's also an opportunity." The following morning, Lana awoke early, her mind buzzing with thoughts. She felt the weight of the challenge ahead pressing down on her. If she failed, she risked not only her safety, but also the safety of the rebellion. But if she succeeded, she could gain valuable insight into the Emperor's plans. When she arrived at the arena, a crowd had already gathered, buzzing with excitement. The Emperor sat on a raised platform, flanked by guards and other members of the harem. The atmosphere was electric, filled with anticipation. Lana's heart raced as she stepped into the center of the arena, the bright lights shining down on her. "Welcome to the contest," the Emperor announced, his voice booming. "Today, we will witness the skills of our finest contestants. Let the games begin." Lana's first opponent was a fierce warrior from a distant planet, known for her speed and agility. The two faced off, and as the match began, Lana focused on her training. She remembered Kyra's advice and the techniques they had practiced together. The match was intense. The warrior came at Lana with a flurry of strikes, but Lana stayed calm, using her agility to dodge and counter. She felt the thrill of the fight, the adrenaline surging through her as she pushed herself to the limit. After a hard-fought battle, Lana emerged victorious, the crowd erupting into cheers. She felt a rush of triumph, but she knew there was still more to come. As she caught her breath, she glanced up at the Emperor. His eyes were fixed on her, a mix of interest and something else, something darker. Lana steeled herself for the next round. She wouldn't let the Emperor's attention scare her. She was ready to fight not just for herself, but for the rebellion that had become her lifeline. This contest was only the beginning, and she was determined to prove that she belonged in this world, no matter the cost. In a flash, she dove behind a large tapestry that hung on the wall. She held her breath, listening as the door creaked open. The Emperor entered, his presence commanding the room. "I know you're here," he said, his voice low and calm. "You think you can sneak around my palace without me noticing." Lana's heart raced as she crouched behind the tapestry, praying he wouldn't find her. The Emperor moved closer, scanning the room. "You have skills, Earthling, but do not think you can outsmart me." Just as he was about to turn toward the tapestry, a loud crash echoed from the ballroom. The distraction had worked. The Emperor's attention shifted, and he rushed back out of the room, leaving the door open. Lana seized the moment, slipping out from her hiding place and gathering as many documents as she could carry. She stuffed them into a small pouch, her mind racing with the implications of what she had found. She would share this information with the rebels, and it could change everything. As she made her way back to the ballroom, she felt a surge of hope. The rebellion was no longer just a plan. It was becoming a reality. They were ready to fight back against the Emperor, and Lana was determined to lead them into battle. With the knowledge she had gained and the strength of her friends behind her, she knew that the time for action was coming soon. The Emperor might have his power, but together they would show him that the spirit of the rebellion could not be crushed. The fight for freedom had begun, and they were ready to rise against tyranny. The final escape. The days after the festival were filled with a sense of urgency and determination. Lana and the rebels spent every moment planning their final escape from the Emperor's palace. They had gathered enough information to strike a blow against him, but now it was time to act. The knowledge they had obtained was powerful, but it wouldn't mean anything if they couldn't get out safely. In the dimly lit room where they gathered, Kyra spread out the documents Lana had retrieved. "These plans show the locations of the guards and their shifts," she said, her finger tracing the lines on the map. "If we can time our escape right, we might be able to get through the East Corridor without being seen." Lana nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "We need to move quickly and stay quiet. If the Emperor finds out what we're doing, he will come after us with everything he has." Marcus stood tall, his expression serious. "We'll divide into groups. Some of us will create a diversion at the main entrance to draw the guards away. The rest will follow Lana through the East Corridor." "What if something goes wrong?" another rebel asked, worry etched on her face. Lana stepped forward, her voice steady. "We've trained for this. We know what to do. We're fighting for our freedom, and we can't turn back now." As night fell, the palace grew quiet. The rebels took their positions, hearts pounding with adrenaline and fear. Lana led her group toward the East Corridor, the dim lights flickering above them. They moved as silently as shadows, their breaths barely making a sound. Every step brought them closer to freedom, but the danger was ever present. As they reached the corridor, they paused to listen. The distant sounds of laughter and music drifted from the ballroom, where the diversion had begun. The guards would be focused on the celebration, giving them a narrow window to escape. Lana felt a surge of hope mixed with anxiety. This was their moment. "Let's go," she whispered, leading the way. The corridor was narrow and lined with ancient tapestries that seemed to watch them as they passed. Lana kept her head high, determination fueling her steps. She could feel the weight of her friends behind her, ready to follow her lead. Suddenly, they heard a voice echoing down the hall. What was that? A guard was approaching. Lana's heart raced as she pressed her back against the wall, signaling her group to do the same. They held their breath, straining to hear. The guard passed, oblivious to the rebels hiding in the shadows. Lana let out a sigh of relief, but they couldn't stay there for long. They continued down the corridor, reaching a door that led outside. It was locked, but Lana remembered a small tool she had seen in the rebel camp. She quickly pulled it from her pocket and began to work on the lock. Her hands trembled as she focused, knowing every second counted. "Lana, hurry," Kyra urged, glancing back down the corridor. "I'm trying," she whispered, her heart pounding. With a final twist, the lock clicked open. Lana pushed the door wide, and the cool night air rushed in, a welcome breeze against her skin. They stepped outside, but the night was not as peaceful as it seemed. The moonlight illuminated the palace grounds, and in the distance, they could see guards patrolling. They had to stay hidden. "We need to stick to the trees," Lana said, pointing toward a cluster of foliage that lined the edge of the palace grounds. The group moved quickly, ducking behind the trees and staying low to the ground. They could hear the guards talking, their voices carrying through the night. The sound of laughter from the ballroom faded as the guards began to realize something was amiss. Lana could feel the tension in the air, and she urged her group to move faster. Suddenly, a loud horn echoed across the grounds. "Intruders!" a guard shouted. Panic surged through the rebels as they broke into a run. Lana's heart raced as she pushed herself to go faster, her legs feeling heavy but determined. They were so close, yet so far from freedom. "Over here!" Kyra shouted, pointing to a nearby gate that led into the forest beyond the palace walls. It was their only chance. Lana led the way, sprinting toward the gate. They could hear footsteps behind them, guards shouting and calling for backup. They reached the gate, but it was locked. Lana's heart sank, but she quickly looked around. "We have to climb it," she yelled, spotting a low wall nearby that they could use to get over. The group scrambled up, helping each other over the top. Lana was the last to go, glancing back to see the guards rushing toward them, their shouts growing louder. Just as she climbed down, she felt a hand grab her ankle, but she kicked it off and fell to the ground, rolling away. "Run!" Kyra shouted, and they took off into the darkness, the trees closing around them. The sounds of the palace faded as they sprinted deeper into the forest, adrenaline pushing them forward. Lana could hardly breathe, but she didn't stop. The thrill of escaping filled her with energy. They finally reached a clearing and paused, catching their breath. The forest was quiet, but they knew they couldn't stay too long. "Did we lose them?" Marcus asked, his face pale but determined. "I think so," Lana replied, looking around. "We need to keep moving, but we also need to find a safe place to regroup." They continued on, moving through the trees until they found a small cave. It wasn't much, but it would provide them with some shelter until they could figure out their next steps. Inside they gathered, their faces lit by the faint glow of a small fire they managed to start. As they sat together, Lana felt a sense of relief wash over her. They had escaped the palace and the Emperor's grasp, but the fight was far from over. They needed to regroup, share the information they had collected, and prepare for what was to come. "Tonight, we celebrate our freedom," Lana said, looking at her friends. "But we must also remember why we are fighting. This is just the beginning." The rebels nodded, their spirits lifted by her words. They had escaped the palace, but they had also begun a new chapter in their fight for freedom. With Lana leading them, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest for a better future. The rebellion had begun, and together, they would rise against the darkness that threatened to consume them.